Well, friends, welcome to today's webinar.
Good evening, and today's talk is on equality, equity, and justice. And this is pertaining to healthcare resource allocation. And this comes as Article 10 of the UN. Okay, so the goals of this webinar, at the end of this webinar, all of you should be able to distinguish between equality and equity. Second, to know the types of justice, and we're not talking about legal, we're talking in terms of resource allocation. So there are three: distributive, procedural, and compensatory. You should know distributive justice in detail. Define distributive justice and its application in resource allocation, and understand the concepts of distributive justice. Okay. So healthcare resource allocation in developing countries as well as undeveloped countries is an ongoing challenge. And why is that? Because there is an inherent inequality that exists in the society, inequality in terms of socioeconomic status, geography, or gender, or many other factors. There's also limited physical access to quality care. You may provide best for people to accept inadequate human resources for health. And if you know, in India, it's the urban-rural ratio of health professionals is skewed. We all know that majority of the health professionals are in the urban areas. So we are proceeding further. Now, two words which are very important: equality and equity. Now, equality and equity are not synonyms, then they don't mean the same. So equity is a process and equality is the outcome. Okay, I'll help you clarify this definition. Equity is required to ensure true equality. So how are equality and equity different? So if you were to define equality, equality is a state of being, or if equal groups are treated fairly and equally, and no less favorably, specific to their needs, including areas of race, gender, disability, religion or belief, sexual orientation, and age. Okay, so this is a very comprehensive definition of equality. Now I want you to look at this picture and tell me what you see. Is anybody would like to? You can type it also if you want.
Everyone.
Yeah, hi. I think this picture shows clear inequality, meaning that all three are given platforms or stools which are of equal height, equal size, but all of them are not of equal height. So only two persons are able to view the match on the other side, but the one who's shorter or smaller is not able to view it. So I think maybe this person needs a higher stool to be able to view the same thing.
Okay.
It shows, I mean, when you look at it, generally, like if you're going to allocate the same thing to everybody, this is what you'll get. You will not be distributing the resources equally to everybody.
Anyone else would like to give an opinion? Okay, so Dr. Sandhya says the purpose is not served. Dr. Vaishali says distributive justice is done, but the purpose is not served. Okay.
Dr. Nazima,
same opportunity. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Here
yes.
The resources given, as per the earlier answer, the same. The resources are given, they are the same. But I think equity is not there. Only equality is there. Equal resources they have given.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I'll just make it a little more clear. So all three are given the same size box. So we have ensured equality. Everybody is getting equal. But is this fair? So equality works only if all three are the same height. So equal distribution of resources does not necessarily achieve an equal outcome, just like one of you mentioned. Now look at this picture and tell me what you think. Anyone would like to explain this, what you see?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, I feel here that resources have been allocated differently to each group, but the purpose has been served so that everyone can enjoy the match equally.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Akash, right? Akash?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Akash, okay. Anyone else would like to share their opinion? Okay, yes, please unmute him. He said if he deserves it. Okay.
Okay, thank you for equal opportunity, madam and sir. Okay. In the second picture, it is pretty obvious that the resources have been unequally distributed, but they are giving the equal opportunity, and even the service provider, if the fence is the real obstacle, we can just lower the fence or it can make it transparent. So there are various ways you can really do a equal distribution of opportunity, provided you think who are the stakeholders or who are at the recipient end and their needs. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jitendra. Okay. So all of you, I'm sure you're understanding what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. So here we have the principle of equity or fairness. Fairness is promoted because the shortest child is given a second box so that he can see the game. Okay. So this is the equity is the application of fairness. Fairness and justice in the way people are treated. Everyone has an equal opportunity to attain their full potential. It implies a need for fairness. We are talking about resource allocation, okay? It implies a need for fairness in the distribution of both benefits and burdens, and the entitlement of everyone to an acceptable quality and standard of living. Okay? So there should be fairness in the distribution of whatever resources you have, but it should be distributed. Benefits and burdens should be distributed evenly. Otherwise, it becomes unfair that someone has to bear all the burden and another group gets all the benefits. Okay? So look at this picture. What do you think now? Isn't this what is happening in the state of, of our country? So the rich who have keep on getting more, okay? And those who actually need, like Dr. Sandhya said, the needy are neglected, okay? So I hope you understood what is equality, the difference between equality and equity. That's right, Harshit has written, rich becoming richer, poor becoming poorer, okay? So are there any factors that affect equality in healthcare? Can you name some factors which can affect equality in healthcare? Financial condition, yes. Social, yes. Geographical, Dr. Sandhya, yeah, thank you. Cultural differences, very good. Okay, so Shivani is poverty, unprivileged women. I think Dr. Sandhya, you meant gender. Okay, good. Yes. Okay, I'm reading this from the WhatsApp group, okay? Social status, good. Okay. Availability is important. Accessibility is important, yes. All right. Awareness of resources available, like tribals. Political will and decisions. Yes, a few of you saying political will. Okay, so generally, if we were to look at factors affecting equality in healthcare, the factors are usually age. So when we have resources, what do? Do we distribute it among all ages equally, or do we favor some groups more than the other? Gender. You know that there are many resources, especially in the state of Tamil Nadu, with the ex-Chief Minister Jayalalitha. You know, she had allocated a lot of funds for women and children. Culture and ethnicity also may affect equality in healthcare. Residents, urban versus rural. Prognosis. What is the type of disease? Would you like to invest in diseases with good prognosis or those with poor prognosis? Legal capacity, disability, insurance cover. So these are some of the factors, and much more you have written on the group, some of the factors which affect equality in healthcare. Okay, so this is just an overview, a little bit of definition of equality and equity, and to understand it, and what are the factors affecting equality in healthcare. So equality and equity are important principles with regard to fair allocation of resources among diverse members of a community. Remember, in India, we are all different cultures and ethnicities. Okay, so it becomes more difficult when it comes to resource allocation, which brings us to the next topic, which is distributive justice. And what is this? Fair allocation takes into account the total amount of goods to be distributed, the distributing procedure, and the pattern of distribution. This is what is called as distributive justice. Okay, I'm repeating this again. Distributive justice is fair allocation takes into account the total amount of goods to be distributed, the distributing procedure, and the pattern of distribution is what is called as distributive justice. Okay, so justice means giving to each what is due. So when it comes to justice in healthcare, we always talk about legal aspects of justice. But in healthcare, there are three types of justice. First one is called distributive justice. Second is procedural justice. And third is compensatory justice. So what is distributive justice? I just gave you the definition. Distributive justice is ensuring that each person receives a fair share of public resources, and it's based on the principle that we should act in ways that treat people equitably and fairly. So there's an element of fairness, entitlement, and equality. Okay? So now I'm going to introduce you to a few concepts of distributive justice. Now the first concept of distributive justice is called authoritarian type of distributive justice. Now what is authoritarian type of justice? It is what the king or the highest authority decrees is just. Okay, so whatever your superior decides, then that type of justice is called an authoritative type of distributive justice. The second is called libertarian. This comes from the word liberty. Okay, so libertarian type of justice is what an individual decides to do with his own property is just. So this type of justice is practiced in USA, and especially when it comes to healthcare, they reject the moral right to healthcare. They say that I should be able to decide if I should contribute to the system, pay towards healthcare system for others. Okay, so the very good example is Obamacare. So when President Obama came in, he made sure that the healthcare was free for everyone. Okay, so as a result of which, some people had to shell out more money so that they could take care of, so that the society is taking care of the people in need. One example is abortion. Okay, so abortion was made free, but in the process, people had to pay more taxes, also could pay. So it became a big issue. They said, why should I pay taxes for people who want to have abortion? They should be able to take care of themselves. So that is how the Obamacare failed. Okay, so it's a libertarian type of justice. That is, individuals decide what they can do with their resources. Then this is a very common principle that you see in resource allocation. It is called the utilitarian principle or utilitarian type of justice. It says it was propounded by George Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham. They said, whatever contributes to the greatest good of the greatest number is just. So greatest good of the greatest number is just. So one of the prime examples of this is vaccination. Okay, so vaccination is given for all children, irrespective of whatever their background is. But in the process, remember, there may be a few that can have the side effects of vaccination. But the principle is greatest good for the greater of the greatest number is just. So this is the utilitarian principle. There's another principle which is called egalitarian. Egalitarian comes from the word equal. Okay, so justice is achieved when everybody has an equitable access to societal resources that they need. Now this type of, that means everybody can access the societal resources. Now remember, this type of egalitarian type of justice is seen in Europe, where they say to all the same, whether you're rich or you're poor, everybody has access to the societal resources. And this was put forward by John Rawls, and he's written a book on it. It's called A Theory of Justice. Now it is okay, this principle is okay if you consider everybody in the society as equal. And you know that in our country, it cannot work. All right, so this is the egalitarian type of principle. Then there's another type of principle which is called restorative justice. And this is justice which requires favoring previously disadvantaged individuals or group. Now, this type of justice looks at who's been hurt, what are their needs, whose obligations are these. Okay, so this principle is one of the examples for restorative justice is what we see in for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. They are given certain privileges, and this is what is called as restorative justice. Okay, so people who are disadvantaged are given preference. So we come back to the most important type of justice, which is distributive justice. Okay, now distributive justice. Okay, distributive justice. Armstrong says distributive justice, I'm emphasizing again, is the ways by which benefits and burdens of our lives are shared between members of a society or community. So there's an equitable balance of benefits and burdens, and this is with regard to resource allocation. Now, Munson put out 4 principles for distributive justice, and we'll go through this one by one. So the first principle, he says, is the principle of equality. The second is principle of need. Third is principle of contribution, and fourth is principle of effort. Now, the principle of equality states that all benefits and burdens are to be distributed evenly, and everyone is entitled to equal share of resources and equal chances to benefit from the services. I want to ask you, with regard to resource allocation, do you think this is a good principle to follow? Principle of equality. So all burdens are and burdens, all benefits and burdens are distributed evenly. What do you think about this principle? Do you think it is a good principle to apply when it comes to resource allocation? Okay, you said, Dr. Sandhya says no, because it depends upon the situation. Okay. They require equitable distribution. Okay. Anyone else has any views?
Rohini Vinayak.
Okay, Jagminta says not so good. Equity is more important.
Sandhya Ramachandran.
Okay. Okay. Anyone would like? Okay, some of you are writing it. It's a bias of the decision maker. Makes work in a world where may work. Oh, in a world where they're all in the same plane. Yes, very good. Okay. Equity might not be achieved within equality. Yes. Okay. Is there any problem in this principle if you apply it?
Maybe the outcomes may not be an appropriate.
It won't be appropriate. Okay, like how we saw the stools and the children. Is that what you say?
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Good evening, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. I believe that, for example, people who are already burdened, it won't really do them any good to actually share the burden of other people as well. For example, imposing taxes on people who are already below poverty line, or like, for say, who aren't earning a certain amount of money per day. So it won't be fair in that case.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So, is there anyone else who would like to say something? Okay. So, like all of you are saying, the principle of equality is good, but not everyone is perceived as equally deserving of an equal share. Isn't that right? Like you said. Okay. And there's also another problem when you apply this principle. There is also differences in level of need. So this may not not result in an equal outcome. It is like we saw the picture of the boxes. Okay. So this may be good in some circumstances, but generally it may not work. Now the second principle is principle of need. It says greater the need, greater the share. What do you think about this? If I need more, I should get more.
Please raise your hands. Arun Kumar Mehra.
Yes. Okay, so Harshita says seems fair. Okay.
Arun.
So if I need more, I should get more.
May I speak, ma'am? Dr. Bapat here.
Yes.
Yeah. With principle of need, there may be a unequal distribution of the resources per se, and on a larger canvas, that may not achieve the goal in the health sector.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else?
Hello.
Yes.
Ma'am, I feel that it could be that a person who is very rich, but he faces a lot of heart diseases or lifestyle-related disorders. So even like he is rich in terms of money, he would be needing a larger share of the healthcare resources.
Okay.
So in such a case, we need to actually define the need. It cannot be
very good. That's
generalized.
That is exactly what I wanted, defining the need. So there's a difference between need and greed, right? But these are principles that, now it is good if you talk about welfare schemes for the poor. Okay, so they require more, the poor, you have to give it to them. But first, like you said, define the need. Okay, so this principle is good for basic and essential needs. But what are the goods that everyone is entitled to is healthcare considered as a good, to give all. Theoretically, all this is very, sounds very nice, but when it comes to practice, it becomes a little difficult. If you see now, I'm not sure how you, what's happening in the other parts of the country, but if you see Karnataka, many of the farmers that we are given BPL cards, but if you see them coming in, they will come driving, Mercedes car and, use the BPL cards, for their healthcare. Okay. So who's to sit there and look whether they need it, or, just because they are farmers, it's taken that they are poor. Okay. So there is an abuse of the system. So we have to be very careful when it comes to resource allocation. The next principle is principle of contribution. It says person should benefit in proportion to their individual contribution. So if I contribute more, shouldn't I get more benefits? What do you think of this principle?
Dr. Bapat here, may I say my opinion?
Yes.
It's not always possible for every individual to contribute to the social cause. It depends on your situation, age, and everything. So, in that sense, the children will not be able to ask anything because they may not be able to contribute, or the geriatric population. And it's not always the same. So, as far as the healthcare is concerned, this principle of contribution will do a lot of injustice to the extremes of ages. That's what I personally feel.
Okay, right. Okay. So this is the principle that the CEOs say, because they say they work in valuable jobs, and that is why they should receive more money. Okay, this is just a little example. Okay, now the principle of contribution, like Dr. Bapat says, there may be injustice also. Now I'll club this principle with principle of effort, which says the degree of effort made by an individual should be the determining factor in proportion of the goods to be received. So if I put in more effort, don't you think I should receive more? What is your opinion on this? Anyone can.
Yeah, ma'am. Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so the whole idea of equity then takes a toss, because if I am more fit, I am obviously not in that much need to get the resources. So then the whole principle of need and equity and equality will go for a toss. So then this principle actually should not work.
It will not work. Okay.
May I speak, ma'am?
Yes.
I will give a little example in the health sector. I being an anesthetist, I think in that perspective. Every time the efforts which are done by the various specialties, there could be an inherent restrictions on that specialty. Like I being an anesthetist, I may be having it's a facilitatory branch. So I'm not going to generate that income for the hospital or something. That does not mean when it comes to the resource allocation, less should come to me, because there is some inherent distribution of the differences in various individuals and the individual capacities to which they can put in effort.
Okay, so Dr. Bhagat, you're talking about being an anesthetist. I'm a pathologist. We are considered second class when it comes to they feel that we don't deserve as much as the clinicians. What is your opinion on that?
Who? Sorry, I didn't get you, ma'am.
I said you're an anesthetist. I'm a pathologist. Now, according to my clinicians, my colleagues, they feel that pathologists don't deserve as much as the clinicians. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, precisely. I mean, that's a wrong conversation, because there is an inherent nature of each profession. Like what opinion you give as a pathologist, whether it's a borderline carcinoma or whether it's a well differentiated, is going to decide the life, and you cannot equate your knowledge with the surgeon who is going to put the knife. They are totally two different things, but equally important, and they are contributory or facilitatory. So that's what I'm saying. The effort what you are putting in, or me, I am as an anesthetist putting in, may be valued in the eyes of society as a higher or lower. but in reality it is not so. So when it comes to the resource allocation, why a surgeon should get a robot which is 2 crore worth, and I should not get worth one anesthesia machine or a pulse oximeter which is going to save a life, which is only going to cost thousands.
Correct. So, Dr. Buffett, when you become the medical superintendent, you should remember all this, okay?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
right, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but actually, Venkat, I would like to say something. It does not
yes.
depend what branch you are on. It actually depends on who is in that managerial position, who's allocating
Exactly.
the.
Exactly. So you realize in which, when you sit in positions of power, how difficult it is to justify why you have taken a particular decision, right? So this principle of effort, the problem with this is also, how do we know what is the exact nature and the impact of a contribution, right? And if you look at two individuals, there's inherent differences in the outcome of individual efforts, regardless of the amount of effort expended. So the simple example that I give is, I study, I study the whole night, and then go and write an exam, and I get 70%. But my roommate studies for 3 hours, sleeps nicely, and she gets 90%. Okay. So this is who's to decide that, because the effort, according to the world, I put in a lot of effort. But when you look at my roommate, she's put only 3 hours. But still, what is the outcome? The outcome is different, okay? She's got a very, 90%, 100%, but I'm still at 60, 70. So these principles are very good theoretically, but when you try and apply it, it may be difficult. But when you take decisions, you should have some sort of principle in your mind to justify why you took this particular decision. Okay. So WHO states that enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being, right? Now, what is our state in India? What does our constitution say about right to health care? Does anyone know what does the Constitution of India? Do we have a bill that is, right to health care?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Article. Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Article
Yes.
21 of Constitution says there is equality in right to health is a part of Article 21 of Constitution. Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. 21 of Constitution of India.
Yeah, it says right to life and liberty, and in that life comes your right for health. Correct?
Health. Yes,
okay, but is health care addressed in some way in our Constitution? Okay, so Dr. Arun Mehra has said, I think it is in the Directive Principles of State Policy. You're absolutely correct. It's outlined in the Directive Principle of the State Policy. It's a duty of the state. Okay, so it's Article 42, which says talks about provision for just and humane conditions of work and maternity relief, and it is a duty of the state to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living and to improve public health. So there's no explicitly, it doesn't state that there is right to health, but in Article 42 and 43, the powers are given to the state. It's a duty of the state to raise the level of nutrition and standard of living and to improve public health. Okay, so it is indirectly addressed in Constitution of India. So the real problem when it comes to resource allocation is because of the vast disparities that are there in the health status. We have local disparities. If you see within your locality itself, you will see there is disparity in the health status. There's national disparities, north versus south, east versus west in India. The health status is different. And of course, there is global disparities. Okay, so that is why it becomes very difficult when we talk about resource allocation, okay? Equality and equity in resource allocation. Okay, so distributive justice in resource allocation in healthcare setting and reform still remains a challenge, especially in a country such as in ours or in India. Okay, now we are moving on to the last two types of justice, procedural justice. Now from the word itself, we can make out it is a process. Okay, procedural justice. It is a process of distribution. The process of distribution must be fair in order to feel that they have received a fair outcome. Okay, so the procedural justice is the process of distribution of resource allocation. Now, George Mackman states that in any procedural justice, the process should be transparent. It should be implemented by a democratically legitimized institution or a person in authority. Like the medical superintendent takes the decision, or the health officer takes the decision. Okay, so it has to be implemented by someone who has the power to do so. There should be a possibility of important group stakeholders to participate. Okay, so if there is a particular policy, all stakeholders involved should be able to participate. And there should be consistency, equal criteria of inclusion for all different types of illness. There should be an opportunity to appeal, and that's why we're saying procedural justice. So the processes of meting out justice should be impartial and fair, and this is what is called as procedural justice. Okay, now I'll just give you in healthcare, I'm not taking a resource allocation, healthcare. Suppose I am the head of the department. This is a very common example that I give. All right, I'm the head of the department. The Medical Council of India is coming for inspection. Okay, now it's not there, so I think it's a board of governors or whatever. They're coming for inspection. Two people require leave. One is a lady whose baby is sick. Okay, and the other one is a single lady whose mother is sick. Now, the MCN states that 25% only can be allowed, to be absent. Okay, now you have to decide as the head of department, who are you going to give the leave to? Are you going to give it to the mother with a sick child, or are you going to give it to the unmarried lady with a sick mother? Okay, so in that process of taking a decision, it should be transparent. Okay, and when it comes to implementation, you have the authority to decide. But you should give both of them should be involved in the decision making. Okay, there should be consistency, and both of them should be able to appeal for why they require the leave. Okay, so I've just made it a bit simplistic to understand procedural justice. So even if you're the medical superintendent, if there is some particular decision that you take, there should be some process in it, so that justice is served for whatever decision you have taken. So this is about procedural justice. Now the last one is compensatory justice, and this is very common. I think in our health profession, the most common example is compensations for wrongs or harms that have been done. And one of the examples is the damages awarded to patients for malpractice or negligence. And the second one is fines which are levied by the higher boards or regulatory bodies. Suppose the Medical Council of India has the authority, in case you do what is contrary to what is expected of a health professional, they have the right to de-roster you from the council. Okay, so from your profession. Okay, so this is what is called as compensatory justice. Okay, so to summarize, distributive justice ensures fair and equitable allocation of scarce resources in healthcare settings. Procedural justice ensures that the process of justice is fair and impartial, and compensatory justice ensures compensations for the wrongs or harms done. Okay, so this is the summary of justice. All right, so I hope you've understood equality. What is the difference between equality and equity? What are the different types of justice, the 3 types? And in distributive justice, the various concepts of justice. Okay.